Have you ever noticed that anger never arrives looking like the enemy? It never knocks on your door and says, "I'm here to destroy your peace." Instead, it comes disguised as something noble. It tells you you're defending your dignity, protecting your self-respect, standing up for what's right. It convinces you that your outrage is proof of strength, and that's exactly why it's so dangerous. Because by the time you realize what anger has taken from you, it's already too late. Think about the last time someone pushed you too far. Maybe they insulted you, maybe they dismissed your opinion, maybe they betrayed your trust, or maybe it was something much smaller, a stranger cutting you off in traffic, a coworker speaking to you with unnecessary disrespect, a message that never received a reply. The moment itself was brief, but what happened inside your mind? Your breathing changed, your heart beat faster, your thoughts began racing. Suddenly, you weren't thinking about your goals, your family, your future. You were thinking about one thing: how to respond, how to prove them wrong, how to make sure they never treated you that way again. In those moments, it feels completely justified, almost inevitable. But here's the question very few people ever ask. What if anger doesn't prove you've taken control? What if it proves you've already lost it? Not because the other person is stronger, not because life is unfair, but because someone else has gained influence over the only thing that truly belongs to you: your mind. The ancient Stoics understood something that still feels uncomfortable today. Your greatest enemy is rarely the person standing in front of you. It's the version of yourself that hands over authority the moment emotion becomes louder than reason. That's a battle most people never realize they're fighting. Marcus Aurelius certainly did. He ruled an empire surrounded by war, political betrayal, disease, corruption, and endless criticism. Every day, someone disappointed him. Someone lied. Someone sought power for selfish reasons. Someone questioned his decisions. If anyone had a reason to live in constant anger, it was him. Yet when he wrote privately to himself, he kept returning to one remarkable idea: our suffering doesn't begin with what happens. It begins with the meaning we assign to what happens. That changes everything. Imagine two people hearing the exact same insult. One spends weeks replaying it, imagining better responses, feeding resentment, allowing one careless sentence to steal countless peaceful moments. The other listens, reflects, learns what they can, and sleeps peacefully that same night. The insult was identical. The difference wasn't the words, it was the mind receiving them. Thousands of years later, modern psychology arrived at a strikingly similar conclusion. Between every event and every reaction, there is a space. Most people move through it so quickly, they never notice it exists. But inside that tiny space lives something extraordinary: the freedom to pause, the freedom to question your first impulse, the freedom to choose who you're going to become next. Unfortunately, most people never use it. They react before they think. They mistake impulse for authenticity. They assume every emotion deserves immediate expression, and they confuse emotional intensity with inner strength. But look around. Has that way of living made people calmer? Has it strengthened families? Has it created wiser leaders? Or has it created millions of people whose emotional state can be changed by complete strangers? The Stoics believed anger wasn't just another emotion. It was a transfer of power. The moment someone can predict your reaction, they begin influencing your behavior. The moment they know exactly which words will upset you, they've discovered a weakness. And the moment they can steal your peace with a single sentence, they've taken something far more valuable than your attention. They've taken your freedom. Real strength has never been about controlling other people. It's about becoming someone whose peace cannot be bought, provoked, manipulated, or stolen. That kind of strength isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't chase revenge. It doesn't need to prove itself. It simply remains steady while everything around it loses control. Imagine walking into a room where criticism no longer shakes your confidence. Imagine hearing an insult and leaving it exactly where it was spoken. Imagine facing disrespect without feeling the need to defend your worth. Imagine ending the day in peace, while the people who tried to disturb you remained trapped inside emotions they couldn't control. That isn't weakness, and it certainly isn't indifference. It's freedom. The Stoics never wanted to eliminate emotion. They wanted to prevent emotion from becoming the ruler of their lives, because emotions are powerful. But power without direction becomes chaos. A horse possesses incredible strength, yet without someone holding the reins, that strength becomes dangerous. The human mind is no different. When reason guides emotion, emotion becomes fuel. When emotion guides reason, reason becomes its prisoner. And that's why intelligent people still destroy relationships in a single conversation, throw away opportunities they spent years building, say words they spend decades wishing they could take back. Anger never asks for permission. It simply borrows your voice, then leaves you to face the consequences alone. The Stoics understood something else that most people overlook. The goal isn't to avoid conflict, and it certainly isn't to win every argument. The goal is to become so mentally disciplined that conflict no longer has the power to disturb your inner world. Because the greatest victory isn't defeating another person, it's refusing to become someone you'll regret being. And once you understand that, a much deeper question begins to emerge. If anger isn't the source of strength we've always believed it to be, then what is? That's exactly where the journey begins. If anger isn't the source of strength we've always believed it to be, then why does it feel so powerful? That's the question. Because in the moment, anger doesn't feel like weakness. It feels like energy. Your heartbeat accelerates, your muscles tense, your voice grows louder, your thoughts seem sharper. For a brief moment, you feel almost unstoppable, as though you've finally taken control. But appearances can be deceptive. Some of the greatest traps in life don't look like prisons, they look like freedom. Imagine watching a puppet perform on stage. From the audience, it appears alive. It walks, it gestures, it even seems to make its own decisions. But move closer, and you notice the strings. Every movement, every gesture, every step depends on someone else's hand. Now ask yourself something uncomfortable. How many invisible strings are attached to your own emotions? How many people already know exactly what to say to upset you? How many situations steal your peace before you've even had time to think? If a stranger can change your mood in a matter of seconds, who's really in control? The Stoics believed this is where emotional slavery begins. Not with chains, not with walls, but with dependence. The moment your peace depends on other people behaving the way you expect, you've quietly surrendered your freedom. Think about how exhausting that is. Without realizing it, you're asking the entire world to cooperate with your happiness. Drivers must be patient. Co-workers must be respectful. Family members must always understand you. Technology must never fail. Plans must unfold perfectly. The weather must suit your schedule. Strangers must agree with your opinions. And if even one of those expectations isn't met, your emotional state begins to crumble. It's an impossible bargain. Reality has never promised to obey our preferences, yet most people spend their lives arguing with reality instead of preparing for it. And reality always wins. Marcus Aurelius understood this better than almost anyone. Every morning he woke, knowing that before the day ended, someone would lie, someone would disappoint him, someone would criticize him unfairly, someone would pursue selfish interests at the expense of others. He wasn't surprised by human nature. He expected it. That single difference changed everything. Most people prepare for comfort. Stoics prepare for reality. And preparation transforms experience. There's an old story that captures this perfectly. A farmer's horse ran away. His neighbors rushed over with sympathy. "What terrible luck," they said. The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." A few days later, the horse returned, bringing several wild horses with it. The neighbors celebrated. "What wonderful luck." Again, the farmer answered, "Maybe." Soon afterward, his son tried riding one of the wild horses. He was thrown to the ground and broke his leg. Once again, the neighbors pitied him. "What terrible luck." The farmer smiled. "Maybe." A week later, soldiers arrived to recruit every healthy young man for war. His injured son was left behind. Now the neighbors called him fortunate. The farmer gave the same answer. Maybe. The wisdom of the story isn't optimism, it's restraint. Most suffering begins because we rush to decide what an event means before life has finished revealing the answer. A rejection today may become the opportunity you're grateful for years from now. A painful failure may redirect your entire future. An unexpected setback may protect you from an even greater disaster. The event itself isn't always the problem. Our immediate judgment often is. This is why anger is so dangerous. It demands instant conclusions. It insists that you already know the whole story. It convinces you that this moment defines everything. But life is rarely that simple. Here's something else. Anger quietly steals your attention. The moment you're offended, your world becomes smaller. Your thoughts circle the same conversation, the same insult, the same mistake. You replay it again and again and again. Meanwhile, life continues moving. The people who love you are still there. Opportunities continue passing by. Beautiful moments quietly disappear unnoticed. Because your attention has become trapped inside a single unpleasant memory. And attention is one of the most valuable things you'll ever possess. Where your attention goes, your life follows. The Stoics guarded their attention more carefully than their wealth, because money can be earned again. Reputation can recover. Time never returns. Every hour spent feeding resentment is an hour stolen from becoming the person you're capable of becoming. Seneca understood this deeply. He warned that anger differs from almost every other emotion. Fear seeks safety. Sadness seeks comfort. But anger seeks more anger. It searches for new evidence, new enemies, new reasons to justify itself. It feeds on its own existence. Have you ever remembered an argument from years ago, only to feel your body react as though it had just happened? Nothing changed. No one said anything new. The event existed only inside your memory. Yet your heartbeat quickened, your jaw tightened, your mood shifted. That's the frightening power of an undisciplined mind. It can imprison itself without any help from the outside world. The Stoics refused to become prisoners of their own thoughts, not because they ignored emotion, but because they refused to obey every emotion they felt. There's wisdom in listening to your feelings. There's danger in allowing them to make your decisions. Imagine standing beside a river after days of heavy rain. The current is wild. The water crashes against the rocks. Branches rush past with incredible force. Would you jump into it? Of course not. You would wait. You would allow the current to settle before deciding how to cross. Your mind works the same way. When anger first appears, everything feels urgent. Every response feels necessary. Every thought feels true. But emotional storms distort judgment. Clarity almost never arrives in the middle of chaos. It arrives after the waters become still. That's why the Stoics practiced something most people overlook. They delayed reaction, sometimes by a few breaths, sometimes by a few hours, sometimes by an entire day. That pause changed everything. Because once emotion loses its urgency, reason quietly returns. And reason often notices what anger completely missed. Perhaps they weren't trying to insult you. Perhaps they're carrying pain you cannot see. Perhaps your assumptions were incomplete. Or perhaps they truly were wrong. Even then, your response still belongs to you. No one else gets to choose it. And that's where genuine strength begins. Not in controlling another person's behavior, but in refusing to let another person's behavior control yours. Little by little, something remarkable begins to happen. Situations that once ruined your entire day only disturb you for an hour, then only a few minutes. Eventually, they barely disturb you at all. Not because life became easier, but because you became stronger. And once that transformation begins, you start seeing something most people never notice. The greatest battles are rarely fought with other people. They're fought with the stories we tell ourselves. And that's where the deepest illusion of anger finally reveals itself. Change the interpretation, and the emotion begins to change with it. The first belief is one almost everyone carries. It's the quiet conviction that someone else created your anger. It sounds obvious. After all, they were the one who insulted you. They were the one who lied. They were the one who betrayed your trust. So naturally, they must be responsible for what you're feeling. But pause for a moment. If another human being can decide your emotional state whenever they choose, what does that make you? Think about two people standing in the rain. One laughs, the other complains. The rain didn't choose their experience. Their minds did. Life works the same way. Criticism reaches two different people. One carries it for years. The other lets it pass before the day is over. The event is identical. The experience isn't. The Stoics never denied that people can hurt us. They simply refused to believe that another person should own the keys to their inner world. The moment your peace depends on someone else's behavior, your peace no longer belongs to you. That's a dangerous way to live, because it means your emotional stability depends on people who may never even think about you again. How many nights have been lost replaying conversations while the other person slept peacefully? How many mornings have been ruined by words someone else has already forgotten? That's the hidden cost of giving other people authority over your thoughts. And once you begin seeing that, another belief quietly reveals itself. The belief that holding on to anger somehow serves justice. It feels noble, almost righteous. You tell yourself that letting go means surrender, that forgiveness means weakness, that if you stop feeling angry, you're allowing someone to escape responsibility. But ask yourself something honest. Has your anger ever changed the past? Has replaying the betrayal erased what happened? Has resentment repaired the relationship? Or has it simply forced you to relive the same pain over and over again? Imagine carrying a burning piece of coal in your hand. You keep telling yourself you'll throw it when the right moment comes. But until that moment arrives, who keeps getting burned? This is what resentment does. It convinces you that you're protecting yourself, while quietly consuming your peace. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that people usually act from ignorance rather than wisdom. That doesn't excuse cruelty. It doesn't justify betrayal. But it changes the question. Instead of asking, how do I make them suffer? You begin asking, what kind of person am I becoming by carrying this? That question is far more uncomfortable and far more important. Because every day spent feeding resentment is another day your life revolves around someone who no longer deserves that much influence. But perhaps the most subtle trap isn't resentment. It's pride. Pride has an extraordinary ability to disguise itself as self-respect. Someone questions your opinion. Immediately you feel the urge to defend yourself. Someone points out your mistake. Suddenly your mind begins building arguments before they've even finished speaking. Why? Because the ego hates being challenged. It whispers, don't let them think they've won. Show them who you really are. Prove them wrong. But real confidence rarely feels that desperate. Look at a mountain. It doesn't argue with the wind. The ocean doesn't become smaller because someone throws a stone into it. True strength doesn't spend its life announcing itself. It simply exists. Epictetus offered an observation that still feels remarkably modern. If someone speaks badly about you, there are only two possibilities. Either they're wrong or they're right. If they're wrong, why surrender your peace over something false? If they're right, why become angry with the truth? Either way, anger solves nothing. As your character becomes stronger, you'll notice something unexpected. The need to defend yourself begins to disappear, not because you've stopped caring, but because your worth no longer depends on convincing other people to recognize it. Your actions become your answer. And finally, there's one belief that quietly traps millions of people for an entire lifetime. The belief that peace will arrive once life becomes fair, once people become kinder, once opportunities become equal, once everything finally unfolds according to plan. But life has never promised fairness. It has only offered possibility. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology. They stopped asking, why is this happening to me? And started asking, how can this shape me? That single shift transforms every obstacle. Failure becomes instruction. Criticism becomes refinement. Disappointment becomes preparation. The obstacle itself becomes the training. Imagine walking into a gym. No one complains that the weights are heavy. The resistance is the entire point. Without resistance, nothing grows. Character works exactly the same way. The difficult people, the unexpected setbacks, the delays, the disappointments, they aren't interruptions to your journey. They are the journey. Marcus Aurelius once compared the disciplined mind to a blazing fire. Throw anything into it, and it becomes fuel. The stronger the fire, the more it transforms what would have extinguished a weaker flame. Imagine becoming that kind of person. A person who turns criticism into wisdom, failure into experience, loss into perspective, pain into discipline. Not because life suddenly became easier, but because your mind became stronger than your circumstances. And once you reach that point, anger begins losing something it has always depended on, its ability to deceive you. Because the moment you stop believing every story your mind tells, you become ready for something even more powerful. Not another idea, a practice. One that the Stoics repeated every single day until calmness became part of who they were. Understanding these ideas is one thing. Living them is something entirely different. Because insight alone has never changed a life. Almost everyone knows that anger can be destructive. Almost everyone understands that patience is valuable. Almost everyone agrees that self-control matters. Yet when the moment arrives, knowledge disappears. Emotion takes over. That's why the Stoics never treated philosophy as information. To them, it was training. The kind of training that happened long before life decided to test you. Think about a firefighter. They don't learn how to stay calm after the building catches fire. A pilot doesn't study emergency procedures while the aircraft is falling from the sky. Preparation always comes before the crisis. The mind is no different. If you wait until you're already furious to practice self-control, you've waited too long. The real work begins in ordinary moments. Long before anyone insults you, long before disappointment arrives, long before life refuses to follow your plans. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. Before each day began, he prepared himself for reality. He reminded himself that somewhere before sunset, he would encounter selfishness, arrogance, dishonesty, impatience, people driven by ego rather than wisdom. At first glance, that sounds pessimistic, almost cynical. Why begin the day expecting difficult people? Because expectation shapes experience. Most people wake up believing the world owes them a smooth day. Everyone should cooperate. Nothing should go wrong. Technology should work perfectly. Traffic should move quickly. People should understand their intentions. And when reality refuses to honor those expectations, frustration appears almost immediately. The Stoics chose a different path. Instead of expecting comfort, they expected life. They quietly reminded themselves, someone may misunderstand me today. Someone may criticize me unfairly. Something important may not go according to plan. My patience will be tested, not because they enjoyed negative thinking, but because they refused to be surprised by human nature. Think about walking outside during a storm you expected. You grab an umbrella. You wear the right shoes. You adjust your plans. The rain still falls, but it no longer controls your mood. Now compare that to a storm that catches you completely unprepared. The weather hasn't changed. Only your readiness has. The Stoics carried that same mindset into every conversation, every setback, every unexpected challenge. Preparation transformed frustration into acceptance, and acceptance created something incredibly valuable: space. The space to notice what was happening inside their own minds. Imagine sitting beside a quiet river. Leaves drift past on the surface. Some are beautiful, some are damaged. Some disappear almost as quickly as they arrive. You don't chase every leaf, you simply watch them pass. Your thoughts work exactly the same way. Every day, your mind produces thousands of them. Some are wise, some are irrational, some are compassionate. Others are fueled entirely by wounded pride. The problem isn't that these thoughts appear. The problem is that most people immediately believe them. The Stoics practiced something remarkably simple. Instead of saying, "I am angry," They learned to say, "I notice anger arising." It may sound like a small difference, but psychologically, it's enormous. One statement turns anger into your identity. The other turns it into an experience. Experiences pass, identities remain. That subtle shift gives you something most people never realize they're missing: choice. Instead of becoming your first reaction, you become the observer watching it unfold. Modern neuroscience has discovered that simply naming an emotion can reduce its intensity. The Stoics had no laboratories, no brain scans, no modern psychology, yet through careful observation, they reached the same conclusion nearly 2,000 years ago. They learned that awareness weakens impulse, and once impulse weakens, reason finally has room to speak. But their practice didn't end there. Each evening, before sleep, they returned to the events of the day, not to criticize themselves, not to drown in regret, but to improve. Seneca described examining his own actions with quiet honesty. Where did I lose my patience? Where did I remain calm? Which moments reflected wisdom, and which moments reflected ego? Notice the difference. Most people judge themselves. The Stoics studied themselves. Judgment creates shame. Study creates growth. Imagine an archer practicing every morning. If every missed shot convinced him he was a failure, he would eventually stop picking up the bow. Instead, he adjusts, learns, tries again. Your character develops the same way. There will be days when anger wins, moments when old habits return, conversations you'll wish had ended differently. The Stoics expected that. They never chased perfection. They pursued progress. Every mistake became another lesson. Every difficult person became another teacher. Every emotional setback became another opportunity to strengthen discipline. And almost without noticing, something begins to change. The space between the event and your response starts growing wider. Where there was once only impulse, there is now awareness. Where there was once chaos, there is now choice. Where there was once anger, there is now understanding. Not because life has become easier, but because your mind has become steadier. And eventually, people begin noticing something different about you. Not because you've become emotionless, but because you've stopped allowing emotion to decide who you are. That's the quiet transformation the Stoics devoted their lives to. Not mastering the world around them, but mastering the world within. And once that inner discipline becomes part of your identity, you discover a kind of freedom that no circumstance can ever take away. Because the strongest person is never the one who controls everyone else. There is a kind of strength the world rarely notices. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't raise its voice to prove a point. And yet, it's stronger than almost anything else. It's the strength of a person who cannot be controlled. Not because they control everyone around them, but because they've learned to control themselves. Most people spend their entire lives chasing power in the wrong places. They want to control other people's opinions. They want to control outcomes. They want to control how they're treated. They want life to unfold according to their plans. But the harder they chase that kind of control, the more powerless they become. Because the world has never promised to obey our expectations. People will misunderstand you. Plans will fail. Loved ones will disappoint you. Opportunities will disappear. Life will continue changing, whether you're ready for it or not. The Stoics understood something that many people spend a lifetime trying to learn. Real freedom begins the moment you stop demanding that reality become different, before allowing yourself to find peace. That realization changes everything. Imagine standing beside the ocean. On the surface, the waves never stop. Storms arrive without warning. The wind crashes against the water. Everything appears restless, chaotic, unpredictable. But far beneath the surface, there is silence. The deeper water remains calm, untouched by the violence above. Most people live only on the surface of their minds. Every criticism becomes another wave. Every disappointment becomes another storm. Every inconvenience pulls them in a different direction. A Stoic chooses to live deeper. The storms don't disappear. The waves never stop. But they no longer define the entire ocean. The same becomes true of your own mind. You'll still feel frustration. You'll still experience grief. You'll still know disappointment. Stoicism never promised a life without emotion. It promised something far more valuable, a life where emotion no longer decides who you become. And that is a completely different way to live. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning. Nothing outside has changed. The traffic is still slow. People are still imperfect. Your responsibilities are still waiting for you. The world is exactly as it was yesterday. But something inside you is different. Someone criticizes you. Instead of reacting, you pause. Someone misunderstands your intentions. Instead of becoming defensive, you listen. Something doesn't go according to plan. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you quietly ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" Those seem like small moments, but a meaningful life is never transformed by one extraordinary decision. It's transformed by thousands of ordinary ones. Every moment you choose patience over impulse, you strengthen your character. Every moment you choose understanding over resentment, you strengthen your mind. Every time you refuse to let another person's behavior determine your own, you become a little freer than you were yesterday. That is how wisdom grows. Quietly, patiently, almost invisibly, until one day, people begin noticing something they can't quite explain. They notice that the situations which overwhelm everyone else barely disturb you. They notice that your confidence remains steady under pressure, that you no longer chase every argument. You don't need the final word. You don't feel compelled to prove your worth. Your calmness begins speaking louder than your opinions ever could. And strangely enough, the less interested you become in proving your strength, the stronger you appear. Because confidence doesn't perform, it simply exists. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself of a truth that has survived for nearly 2,000 years. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Notice what he didn't promise. He didn't promise an easy life. He didn't promise fairness. He didn't promise comfort. He promised strength. And strength lasts far longer than comfort ever will. Perhaps that's why so many people feel exhausted today. Not because life has become impossible, but because they're fighting battles they were never meant to fight. Battles against strangers' opinions. Battles against yesterday's mistakes. Battles against futures that haven't even happened yet. No one wins those battles. The Stoics quietly stepped away from them. Not because they lacked courage, but because they understood where true victory could actually be found. The greatest victory has never been over another person. It has always been over yourself. Years from now, when you look back on the life you've lived, very few people will remember the arguments you won, the clever comebacks, the insults you answered, the grudges you carried. But you will remember the person those choices turned you into. Long after today's frustrations have faded, your character will remain. Long after people's opinions have disappeared, your habits will remain. Long after the noise of the world has gone silent, you'll still be living with the person you became. That's why Stoicism was never about escaping life. It was about becoming someone who could walk through life's greatest storms without losing themselves. Because storms are inevitable, loss is inevitable, disappointment is inevitable, but becoming a prisoner of those experiences is not. The next time anger begins to rise, don't ask yourself, "How do I get rid of this feeling?" Ask something far more powerful. Who will I become if I follow it? Then, ask one more question. Who could I become if I simply let it pass? Those two futures are waiting for you every single day. One is built on reaction. The other is built on discipline. One slowly gives your life away. The other slowly gives it back. And every conversation, every setback, every disappointment, every difficult person is another opportunity to decide which path you're going to walk. The beautiful part is this: you don't have to become perfect. You don't have to eliminate every negative emotion. You don't have to master your mind overnight. You only need to make one wiser decision than you made yesterday, then another, until discipline becomes habit, habit becomes character, and character becomes freedom. Because in the end, the strongest person in the room isn't the loudest. It isn't the most feared. It isn't the one who wins every argument. The strongest person is the one who has mastered the only kingdom they will ever truly own, their own mind. If this message challenged the way you think about anger, then remember, mastering your mind isn't something you achieve once. It's something you practice every single day. If you're ready to keep building that kind of inner strength, subscribe to Stoic Discipline, where timeless Stoic wisdom becomes practical guidance for modern life. Until next time, protect your peace, guard your mind, and never forget, no one can control the person who has already learned to control themselves.